Hey, what's going on? Sean. Today on my channel, I'd like to talk about your personal musical education. And by education, I don't mean the school you went to, although that could have an impact on what I'm about to talk about as well down the line. But I'm talking about the music you came up listening to, the music you were raised listening to, what was in your household, what you discovered as a child, and the journey that you went on through that music. Now, in my case, I came from a musical family. At least 20 people around me in my immediate surroundings growing up played acoustic guitar and sang, or were professional musicians and stuff. So I was exposed to a wide variety of music of the time, 60s, 70s stuff, the singer-songwriter stuff, Joni Mitchell, Crosby, Stills, Nash, the Eagles, the Beatles, Carole King, soul music. I don't care if it's Elton John or Billy Joel or David Bowie. Definitely a lot of Eric Clapton and the Outlaws, Marshall Tucker. I mean, it just goes on and on. Paul Simon, Peter, Paul and Mary, Elvis. My parents were of the 60s. So, the 60s, quintessential 60s generation music was theirs. Van Morrison. And that music, if you are compelled to become an artist yourself, informs you. It's your education. It teaches you about songwriting. If it moves you, you try to emulate that as an early writer. So that's what I mean when I talk about your personal music education. Where we come from has an extraordinary amount to do with it. Now, my musical songwriting partner and buddy Mark, he came up with older parents. I mean, a lot older, and they didn't listen to anything. They listened to big band music, and he got obsessed with rock music, prog rock, Genesis, Kansas, Journey, anything rock with keyboards, Styx, because he was a keyboard player. And so he kind of found that on his own and had to start his musical journey from there on his own. And he had to go back later on and discover some of the singer-songwriter things that I discovered because I came up early on loving. And in fact, he's still not quite the fan of that stuff compared to me. Whereas hanging out with him and being in bands with him helped me to appreciate more the prog rock stuff. I never would have been a fan of Genesis, who I think are one of the all-time great bands. You want to talk about complex songwriting, you want to talk about crazy chord changes and things like that teach you other things outside of cowboy chords or acoustic guitar type music. I mean, primarily melodically keyboard-based music. Now, if I take a step back, everybody around me was playing guitar when I grew up, and so I decided that I wanted to play keyboards first. So I did get a piano and played piano first, but I still always played guitar as well, because I would just watch what everybody was doing and play it. So, that's going to inform where you come from in your development as well. So if you don't come from a musical family, but you are compelled to play and want to write, you're just trying to hunt around and figure out what music you want to listen to, or you're just on the hunt for some great music. Where do you start? Okay, like I said, some of us started with what we grew up around, but if you didn't grow up around this kind of music that you're compelled to write and play, where do we start? Well, the funny thing is everybody will say the Beatles, and as far as contemporary rock music in the last 60 years, it is the Beatles, for a lot of reasons. Their singing, playing, and writing was all around superior to anybody at the time, and pretty much almost anybody that's come since. There are other great artists as well that I can talk about, but I think for rock contemporary music, it starts with the Beatles. Complex chords, challenging and complex melodies, counterpoint, harmony. I mean, it's all there. Everything from, they would take a 3-chord song, and this is why I learned to do it as well. And they would reharmonize it, and they would put other chords in there with a common melody that you would go to. Like with chord substitution, other chords that work over the same melodies. You're going to learn lots of music theory by osmosis by listening to the Beatles. I mean, the Beatles are an education unto themselves. So if you don't like the Beatles, you're going to have a stunted educational growth musically. I learned so much from the Beatles that I don't think I could quantify it. I continue to learn from the Beatles. After the Beatles, you can pretty much go anywhere from there. Get a really good foundational education in music theory and melody use, harmony, like I said, chords, everything. I mean, you can get heavy, you can go singer-songwriter, you can go Bob Dylan, you can go country, anything from there. But after the Beatles, I would recommend, if you're rock, get into some guitar stuff. I mean, for me, it was the Beatles, and then Elton John, Billy Joel, the Eagles. I was always into Joni Mitchell and stuff like Stevie Wonder and Van Morrison and Allman Brothers, Outlaws, Marshall Tucker. I mean, then in high school I discovered heavy guitar. I discovered Eddie Van Halen in high school, so we went from there. Then I was lucky enough to go to high school in the 80s, so I had all the hair bands. So I had all the Guns N' Roses and the Rat, whilst at the same time I grew up with all the great 80s bands like Duran Duran and NXS, and I could name a million bands. But your foundation is where it all starts. If you're from Oklahoma and you grew up listening to George Jones and all the great Hank Williams Sr. and stuff, that's your foundation. You take it from there and you move from there. For my stuff, I don't think rock contemporary music has really anything to offer as far as a foundation nowadays. It's all derivative of what came before it. I could be wrong. There's probably indie artists out there who are doing awesome things that I've never heard of course. Well, your foundation is who you become, and it's probably going to be a lifelong endeavor, or at least decades-long endeavor. How deep and how wide you go is up to you. I started out where I said, and then I went very, very wide and very deep. And I consider myself a pretty well-rounded musician. I don't know anything new. In the last 10 years, I don't know anything new. I lived in Nashville. I was writing songs on the road and that kind of thing. And the LA pop, urban element started to creep in with hip-hop cadence. And then I wasn't a fan of it. So that's when I started pulling away and ultimately left. But the songwriter you become absolutely has everything to do with what you grew up with. And the thing about it is, when you're young, you have such you're an empty vessel to be filled with experiences and with great music. As you get older, you've heard it all. You've heard more and more and more, and there's less and less out there that can move you. And I would say, if it's great music if it moves you. I've written 3-chord tunes that, because of the melody, because of the way it's sung, because of the mood, lyrically has a lot to do with it. It could drive you to tears. Complex dream theater prog rock out there that could just exhilarate you, that could bring you up and down and stuff. So if the music moves you, it's good music. So I'm not here to criticize, but if it moves you and that's the direction you want to go in, take that and try to go as deep and as far as possible and experiment. You're a product of your musical education, and your education goes on for decades. It doesn't end when you're young, but you can absorb a lot more with a young mind, a fertile mind, and a less densely packed mind. So that's my screed for the day. I hope you got something out of it. Like I said, I love these driving around type videos. It gives me a chance to ramble, gives me a chance to think. I'm on my way to get my coffee in the morning. So I'm Sean. Please like and subscribe, and a lot more to go. And we've got a lot more to come. So we'll talk to you soon. Bye.